Hi. Hello everyone. This is Jay Coder back with another stream. And today we're going to be going over more on testing and running instrumentation tests and how we can do this with Recyclerview. So if you don't know how to do that, stick around and we'll go over this in this code lab here today. Please subscribe and comment on this video and like this video, and always stay coding. And so now we're gonna go ahead and go over this lesson, and this is going to be over the app that we were working on for the past few days. It's the affirmations app. If you don't know about that, or if you need to catch up, go ahead and check out the last few videos where we build the affirmations app. But now, thanks for being here, and without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and also mute the music here. And as always, I copy the link so that people can be able to follow along. If you're just getting here, or if you get here later, you will also see the link to the code lab here. I also post it in the comments section. And alright. Tests, lists, and adapters. Before you begin, in previous code labs, we learned how to write and run both unit and instrumentation tests. These code lab introduces some best practices when writing tests and how to add specific Gradle dependencies for testing. You will also get to practice writing more unit and instrumentation tests. Prerequisites: you have opened an existing project in Android Studio. You have written unit and instrumentation tests in Android Studio. You have some experience navigating projects in Android Studio. You have some experience working with build.gradle files in Android Studio. And what you'll learn: the fundamentals of writing a test, how to add testing specific Gradle dependencies, how to test lists with instrumentation tests. What you need: a computer with Android Studio, the solution code for the affirmations app. Download the starter code for this code lab. In this code lab, you'll add instrumentation tests to the solution code for the affirmations app. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and post the starter code for this lab inside the chat so that you all can be able to download the starting code if you're introduced to the affirmations app for the first time. And navigate. So this is telling you how to download it from the GitHub. I'll leave that for an exercise for you guys. And so, alright, now it says click the run button to build and run the app. Make sure it builds as expected. Alright, starter app overview. The affirmations app consists of one screen that shows the user a list of images paired with words of affirmation. The best practices. So, with the best practices, by design, test code looks different from business logic for an application. That's because tests are not supposed to contain logic. They are only supposed to test it. Therefore, tests should not have conditional statements like if or when, or control flow statements like for or while. They should also not manipulate values or conduct any real computation. Occasionally, your test may require some of these things, but in general, you should avoid them. Since this is the type of logic that we want to test in our app, if we had that kind of code in a test, it could fail in the same way that our app code could fail. Our unit test should only call the piece of code from our app that is necessary for the test, and the test the and test the values or state of the code that results from calling that code. UI tests should only test for the expected state of the user interface. The concept may take a while to sink in, but that's okay. There are some topics that help to explain this concept that we will cover in future collabs. In the meantime, as we write more tests, pay careful attention to the approaches we take to writing the test. 4. Create the test directories. In previous code lab, you learned how to create an Android test directory for instrumentations tests. Repeat the process of this project for both the Android test directory and the test directory. The process is the same for both. The only difference being that for test directory, you must select test Java from the directory drop down instead of Android test Java. Create a new package for each new directory called com.example.affirmations. Okay, so create a new package for each new directory called com.example. Okay. Create a new class in com.examples.affirmation called affirmationslist.kt. Okay, inside our Android Studio, we're going to go to our test, okay, this is our affirmations. Okay, and then we have the Android test and the Android, these two. And then says inside, I'm going to just leave it how it already is, com.sample.affirmations, instead of renaming stuff to com.example and things like that, because it can cause problems, and we can simply keep the directory that's already created. And so inside the directory that's already created, we're going to add a new Kotlin file, a Kotlin class called affirmation list test.kt. Affirmations list test.kt. And then we're gonna go ahead and create that. And as with the Dice Roller app, Affirmations only has a single activity. In order to test the UI of the activity, we have to specify that we want it to launch. So if you can recall how to do this on your own. Add a test runner to newly created add a test runner to the newly created class at run with, and make an activity scenario rule for the main activity. Okay, for our inside our Android Studio. They want us to add this line, run with Android with JUnit. We have to import some things here. Make an activity scenario rule for the main activity. And we're importing the necessary imports for that. So, alright. And 3, Affirmations app displays a list of images and their respective positive affirmations. The UI doesn't allow for any interactions with the items like clicking or swiping, for example. So for the app, the instrumentation test only tests static data. Create a test method called scroll to item. Remember that it must be annotated with @test. This test should scroll to a specific item contained in the list. We haven't covered this approach yet since it requires a method that our project doesn't have reference to yet. Before continuing with the test, we need to add some testing dependencies. Adding instrumentation test dependencies. You should already have some familiarity with adding Gradle dependencies for use in your app code. Gradle also lets us add dependencies specifically for unit tests and instrumentation tests. Open your app and app level build.gradle and file located at app.build.gradle in the dependencies section. There are 3 kinds of implementations for dependencies: implementation, test implementation, and Android test implementation. Implementation is for dependencies that will be used in the application itself. Test implementation is for dependencies that are used in unit tests. And Android test implementations is for dependencies that are used in instrumentation tests. Add a dependency to allow interaction with the Recyclerview views and instrumentation tests. Add the following library as an Android test implementation. So, as an Android test implementation, so we would go to our Android Studio, and then we would go to our app level. This is the project level Gradle, and this is the app Gradle. You notice at the side it says project, and at the side it says module, and they instructed us to go to the module app level Gradle file. So there's project level and app level. I'm going to the app level, and then they want us to look for something called, well, actually it's going to be called the Android test implementation. Android test implementation. So let's try that. So with this Android test implementation, it wants us to add this Espresso contrib. So set implementations, you would do it like this. Set the dependencies. Inside the dependencies, so we will do this, and this guy It's going to be within the parenthesis, the quotation. And then after that, we're going to put the Android test implementation. So, okay. And then after that, we're going to go to sync now to sync the newly added dependency that we added to our app level Gradle file. And then test the recycler view. Once the project is synced, go back to the affirmation list test.kt file. Provide a view interaction to perform an action on the onView. The onView method requires a view matcher to be passed in. Use with ID, making sure to pass in the ID of the recycler view that was used for the affirmation. Now call perform on the view interaction. This is where the newly added dependency comes into play. The recycler view action dot scroll position recycler view dot view holder 9 view action can now be passed in. On view with ID r.id.recyclerview.perform recyclerview actions that scrolls to position recyclerview.holder of 9. So it wants us to go ahead and add this. What's the project? Go back to this file. Provide a view interaction to perform an action on view. So let us go back and we're going to go to our Android Studio. And then we're going to go inside our Android Studio. And then inside our Android Studio, we're going to go to back to our affirmations test file, instrumentation test area, and then we're going to so let me see. So provide a view interaction to perform an action on view. The on view method requires view matcher to be passed in. Use with ID, making sure to pass the ID of the recycle view that was used for the affirmation. Now call the perform on the view interaction. This is where the newly added dependency comes into play. The recycler view.action.scroll to position can now be passed in. Understand that the syntax of this line is not critical, but it's worth exploring. And so okay, so informations test. And then let me see. at test. Let me see. And this could be like a function by tests. And then inside show I test. Okay. Okay. So I believe it wanted us to put this code inside our own test method, which I didn't see where it mentioned that, but that's probably what it needs since it seems like this area is for making methods to run your UI test. So let's go back to the lesson here. Now call let me just see something really quick. Okay. The instrumentation class. And those are the two things. Okay. Alright. So moving on, understanding the syntax of this line is not critical, but it's worth exploring. The name Recyclerview Actions is exactly what the name implies. A class that lets your test take action on a recycler view. Scroll to position is a static method from the Recyclerview Actions class that will scroll to a specific position. This method returns what is called a generic. Generics are outside of the scope of this code lab, but in this case, you can think of it as the scroll to position method returning whatever the items in the recycler view are, which could be anything. In our app, the items in our recycler view are view holders. So we place a pair of angle brackets after the method call in them. We specify recyclerview.viewHolder. Finally, pass in the final position in the list 9. Note Notice that a hard coded value of 9 was passed for the position. This only works because the size of the list in the app is static. If the app had a dynamic list size, using a hard coded value would not be a good practice since the size is unknown and the recycler view adapter for the main activity cannot be accessed as the variable holding the recycler view is contained inside the onCreate method. If the variable was declared at the class level of main activity, we could access it to get the size of the adapter. Furthermore, UI tests shouldn't necessarily access variables in the activity being tested. That sort of approach would be more appropriate for a unit test. Avoiding hard coded values for a test like this will be addressed in step 2. 2. Now, scrolling to the desired position of the recycle view is enabled. Make an assertion to ensure that the is displayed. UI is displayed. The the s ensure that the UI is displaying the expected information. Make sure that once you scroll to the last item, the text associated with the final affirmation is displayed. Start with view interaction, but this time pass in a new view matcher, and in this case with text to that method. Pass the string resource that contains the text of the last affirmation. The with text method identifies a UI component based on the text it displays. For this component, all that needs to be done to check that it displays the desired text. This is done by calling check on the view interaction. Check requires view assertion, or for which you can use the matches method. Finally, make the assertion that the UI component displayed by passing the method is displayed. Going back to note about hard coding a position to scroll to, there is a way that this can be overcome using Recyclerview actions. When you're unsure of the length of your list, you can use the scroll to action. The scroll to function requires matcher viewer to view to find a particular item. This can be a number of things, but to serve the purpose of this test, use with text. Applying this to the test you just wrote, the code would look like this. So, what we have is so inside our actual Android Studio, we have this guy here with the on view. With our recycler view. Dot perform. Scroll to. So to prevent this hard coding, they want us to change this to scroll to the text that of affirmation 10. So that's like a better technique in order to test the scrolling, that it scrolls to the correct position. So we're going to go ahead and change that. inside our Android Studio to be able to scroll to that particular text, which we need to include that. And then after that, there is this. On view with text r.string.affirmation10.check matches is displayed. So we're checking that once we attempt to scroll to this affirmation 10, we're checking and seeing if it is displayed. So we need to now call that code after this code inside our test to make sure, and matches needs an import. And the matches is an espresso type of statement. Since we are using espresso for our instrumentation test, which is a UI test. And then we import is displayed method there, like they're saying. And there are a number of useful functions associated with the Recyclerview Actions class, which you can read here. So there is this link takes us to different actions that we can perform. Scroll to position, scroll to last position, scroll to holder, scroll to action on item at position. So some kind of action on item at position, action on item, action on holder item. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and post this in the chat for you all to be able to check for your reference if you would like to learn extra about the different actions that you can call in the test for Recyclerviews. Now let us go back. All right, so now everything is ready to run the test. You should see the device or emulator scroll to the bottom of the list, and subsequently that the test passes. If you want to make sure that the test result is accurate, replace the string ID with r.strings affirmation 1. After scrolling, this string resource is not displayed and the test should fail. There are a number of methods available in the Recyclerview Actions class, and we encourage you to take a look at the available methods, which is probably the same link here. So yeah, so Recyclerview Actions. Alright, let us go back to our Android Studio. And inside our Android, or actually let me post this in the chat really quick that the above link is more on Recyclerview actions. All right. For UI testing. All right. So it says now everything should be ready for us to run the test. Let's go ahead and run the test. So let's go back to our Android Studio. Inside our Android Studio, we will run the test that we made. And then it's opening our UI, our emulator, and running the application. So it's running the application. Gradle build is running and it's loading. Just waiting on it to build right now. Okay. So it has played and it blew up. And the reason why Android test dot blah blah error performing scroll Recyclerview 2 holder with view an instance of blah 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 that get text equals string from resource blah 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 on view animations or transitions are enabled for the target device. Okay, so equal string animations on view. Animations or transitions are enabled on this device. Alright, let's see here. Create a new class and test. Alright, so inside our Android Studio, we have this error here. Failure build failed with an exception. What went wrong? Execution failed for task. This. There were failing tests. See the report. Failing tests. Affirmations test. Error performance scroll. Scroll to Recyclerview. Holder with view an instance of blah blah blah. Okay. On view animations or transitions are enabled. Target device. So I'm getting this error here, and I'm going to do a Google search on this error really quick. And animations or transitions are enabled on the device. Test failed. So, I'm getting Android support, blah, blah, forming, view animations are able. I read this article. Okay. Exception stack. Espresso doesn't work well with animations due to the visual state delays they introduce. You need to disable animations on your device. Okay, so on our device, let's try this. Let's go to settings. So this is the emulator, not my actual device, but the emulator, but it should work the same way. Let me see here. Might have to enable developer options. Do we have developer options? This is a system, and then about emulator device, build number. Okay, so you have to tap build number here about 7 times to turn on the developer mode. Alright, since now we have the developer mode, let's see if we can find this setting that we need to find. Open the settings app, scroll to the bottom of the phone. We already did that. Return to the previous screen to find developer options near the bottom. Access developer options from from the settings app, and under the drawing section, switch all of the following options to animation off. So inside the settings app, under drawing section, let's see if inside the settings app we can search for drawing. Okay. I don't see a drawing. Okay. Inside the drawing, what if I just type in window animation scale? Okay. Where did it go? Here? Okay, it's down there. Windows animation. And let me check if this if it's the accepted answer. There's not really an accepted answer. So we'll go with this one. So with this, it says it wants us, or they said they want when the animation scale is off. Transition animation scale is off. Animator duration scale is off. So, alright, let us see if that will work. Alright, so let us go and replay our tests. And since we turned off the animations, let's see if it will pass. So, affirmation list test, my test. Then I'll go ahead and test it, run test, see what happens. Uh-oh, still an error. Error performing scroll Recyclerview holder with view an instance of equals string resource. An instance of Android, blah blah blah, and view.getText equals string from resource, blah 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 on view. Cause my found 0 items matching holder with view instance of android.widget.textView get text equals string from resource ID. So is this resource ID correct? Then is this one also correct? And then is this one same thing as this one? Let me see. Oh, okay, so found 0 items matching holder with view on the instance of android.widget.textView view.getText. Okay, but position -1 was requested. Okay, let me see here. Bear with me, guys. I'm getting the source code here so that we can have the correct Um, actually, with their source code, I'm not sure if they even uploaded it here. At least the test part. Let me see. Okay, so let me go ahead and follow this really quick. Adding local test dependencies. Earlier in this code lab, we discussed three different types of dependency implementations, and you added a dependency for instrumentation tests. Now add a dependency for local tests. Navigate to app build.gradle and add the following to the dependencies. So they want us to add this unit test dependency inside the Android. Let me go ahead and do that really quick. That's my keto instead of JUnit. And also wanted create a new class and test called this one. So just instead of the instrumentation test, they want a new test inside the test, which is the unit test. So we're gonna make a Kotlin class, and it's gonna be called that. Okay. All right, guys. I'm actually going to um actually wrap this stream out for today. Since there are some errors that are happening with our UI test, and so I'm going to do some investigation and come back with part two for you all with that part solved. And remember, always stay coding. Please subscribe to the channel and have a great weekend. Peace.